What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of the Forgotten Race Review. Today, at the request of Trey Rath, who's requested several things, and that's totally fine in this series and any other series if you guys out there want to do that, within reason, mind you, we'll be covering the Samsaran, who appears in the Advanced Race Guide, who appears in the Dragon Empire's Primer, and also who appears in the Occult Bestiary. That's right, today's episode of the Forgotten Race Review is going to be a 2-for-1. As we will also cover the Occult Bestiary's Reborn Samsaran. So as of this video right now, and I imagine this number is going to go up even before we're done editing, Black Dragon Gaming sits at 420 subscribers. That means we need just 4 more to get the first requirement for our Doomsday Dawn playtest adventure giveaway to fire. If you guys want to know more about the giveaway, you can follow this card right here. And if you'd like to help us reach our second goal to get this giveaway to fire, raise our Patreon to about $150 a month. Our Patreon link is, as always, in the description. Before we get underway, though, I do have to announce that the channel has officially its 4th patron and its first patron that I don't either know personally in real life or have a relationship with through our YouTube channels. He's come in a little short of the mark that would get him a regular shout out on this channel, but I'm super excited about it. Really quick, this episode of the Forgotten Race Review was brought to you in part by Greg Ruiz. Greg, thank you so much for your time and support, and again, like I said when I messaged you on Patreon, thank you so much for being the first person I don't know in real life or have a relationship with through YouTube that's had enough faith in me, had enough faith in this channel to throw some money in the jar to help us become bigger, more powerful, super awesome on the internet. I really appreciate it, and your fellow subscribers will as well, because if we get enough patronage to run the Doomsday Dawn adventure, not only have you just secured yourself a second entry, should you choose to enter, but we'll be playing it on your back. You demand, Greg. Now let's get to it, shall we? So in Sanskrit, Samsara means wandering or world with the connotation of a cyclic change. It also refers to the theory of rebirth and the cycling of all of life, matter, and existence, which is a fundamental assumption of all the Indian religions. Samsara is sometimes referred to with terms or phrases such as transmigration, the karmic cycle, reincarnation, and the full exposition of the Samsara doctrine is found in ceramic religions such as Buddhism and Jainism, as well as the various schools of Hindu philosophy. In Pathfinder, the Samsarans are a race of quasi-immortal humanoids bound simultaneously to the material world and the realm of the spirits. They are almost ghost-like in their appearance. They have dark hair, white eyes that lack both pupil and iris, and pale blue skin beneath which flows crystal clear blood that looks not unlike water. A Samsaran is aware of their previous lives through incomplete memories, through dreamy recollections, and they know that they will continue to live after death. Samsaran philosophy teaches that each life is but one incarnation of the many it will go through. They can give birth to human children, who they usually give up to human societies to raise in a fashion befitting humans, but upon death, some of these children will reincarnate as Samsarans. However, that only happens if they have lived a life in keeping with harmony. Samsarans usually reincarnate as Samsarans upon death, but one who has either fallen completely out of harmony in their latest life or who has lived in the most harmonious way possible faces a different fate as their soul makes its way to Pharasma. If you'd like to hear more about Pharasma, follow this card right here for their final punishment or final reward. In pursuit of spiritual perfection, Samsarans generally live simple aesthetic lives apart from most other societies, though many of them choose to experience the richness of the world and thus take up the adventuring mantle to deepen their understanding of life. Now, in the case of the reborn Samsaran, sometimes a Samsaran will perish under especially dramatic circumstances, which causes the Samsaran's soul to wander the ethereal plane before finally reincarnating. The spiritual journey that the Samsaran's soul takes frays its connection to its past lives, but strengthens its ability to read others' past and present. Now, since we have 2 racial stat blocks to discuss today, let's get down to it. The basic Samsaran receives a +2 to its intelligence and its wisdom, but takes a -2 to its constitution. These guys are insightful and strong-minded, but their bodies tend to be frail. They are medium humanoids with the Samsaran subtype, and they have a base speed of 30 feet. A Samsaran gets a +2 racial bonus on all saving throws made to resist death effects, saving throws against negative energy, fortitude saves made to remove negative levels, and constitution checks made to stabilize if reduced to negative hit points. In addition, a Samsaran's past lives grant them bonuses on 2 particular skills. They choose 2 skills, both of which they receive a +2 racial bonus on, and those 2 skills are treated as class skills regardless of whatever classes a Samsaran actually becomes. Samsarans have low light vision, and Samsarans with a charisma score of 11 or higher can once a day cast Comprehend Languages, Death Watch, and Stabilize, with a caster level equal to the Samsaran's actual level. The reborn Samsaran also receives a +2 to its intelligence and wisdom, but takes a neg to its con. The reborn Samsaran is insightful and learns quickly, but again, they still tend to be frail. They still have low light vision, they are still humanoid Samsarans with a base speed of 30 feet, but they receive something called Psychic Attunement, which says that reborn Samsarans receive Psychic Virtuoso as a bonus feat at first level. Those who can't use occult skill unlocks, so basically those who aren't playing a Psychic, Mesmerist, Occultist, all the fancy occult classes, at first level instead gain the Psychic Sensitivity feat as a bonus feat. A reborn Samsaran with a charisma score of 11 or higher can cast the following spells, as per the Psychic Magic Universal Monster rule, which means there's a system of points you tick down from every time you cast one of these spells, using their Charisma modifier to determine the DC, Burst of Insight, which costs 1 psychic energy, Detect Psychic Significance, which costs nothing, Object Reading, which costs 2 psychic significance, and Psychic Reading, which costs 1 psychic energy. The caster level is equal to the Samsaran's level, and the reborn Samsaran has a reservoir of 5 PE or psychic energy. Reborn Samsarans also have a thing called aura transparency. They have difficulty hiding their psychic signatures, and thus the DC of any skill check made to read their aura decreases by 5. In addition, the check takes 1/10 as long as normal to perform, but they also have an ability called Psychic Learning. When a reborn Samsaran expends psychic energy to cast Psychic Reading to identify a humanoid's class, he temporarily treats 2 of the target's class skills as if they were class skills of his own. He can use those skills untrained and gains a +2 insight bonus on such checks. These benefits last for 24 hours, or until the reborn Samsaran spends psychic energy to cast Psychic Reading again. Now, before we talk about my experiences with this race, and I have several, or how I would use them, there's one alternate racial trait we have to point out because it's super, super good. It is called Mystic Past Life. It replaces Shards of the Past, so the reborn Samsaran doesn't get this, however, still super great. It allows us to add spells from another spellcasting class to the spell list of your current spellcasting class. You add a number of spells equal to 1 plus your spellcasting class's key ability score bonus, Wisdom for Clerics, Charisma for Sorcerers, you guys get the idea. The spell must be the same type, whether that be Arcane, Divine, or Psychic, as the spellcasting class you're adding them to. So, for example, you can add Divine Power to your Druid spell list, but not your Wizard list, because Divine Power is a divine spell. For the same reason, you could add Fireball to the Witch spell list, but you couldn't add it to the Cleric spell list, because that's an arcane spell. These spells do not have to be spells you can cast as a first level character, and the number of spells granted by this ability is set at first level. Changes to your ability scores do not change the number of spells gained, but let's say we're playing a Samsaran wizard. We begin play with 20 intelligence, putting our base stat to 18 and taking that buff. That means we get 6 arcane spells that aren't on the wizard spell list added to our own. That means 6 spells from the Blood Rager list, the Witch list, the Alchemist list, the Magus list, the Summoner list. By that same notion, our Druid can add Cleric spells to his spell list. By that same notion, our Cleric is adding Druid spells to his spell list. It becomes even more powerful in something like a Gestalt game, which really I recommend everybody try at least once because they're really fun, because essentially that's kind of like a half of another class tacked onto yourself. Seriously, I could go on and on forever with this. Paladin spells added to my War Priest spellcasting list, anti-paladin spells added to my paladin list, which is a problem in and of itself. Psychic spells added to my Psychic Bloodline Sorcerers spell list. It goes on forever, it's really good. Now, I have had the pleasure of GMing for a Samsaran in the past, and the pleasure of theory crafting one for myself. A long time ago, in a game I reference a whole lot because it's the only campaign I've ever run front to back, and with Doomsday Dawn coming out around the corner, it references a lot of now canon things that were brought up in that game. My wife played a Samsaran Arcanist. Now, really, truthfully, she probably would have been a Shabti if we knew Shabtis existed, and for more about that race, you can follow this card right here. Because she was playing the god Nethys reincarnated. Now, there weren't a whole lot of Buddhist themes going on here because we weren't really aware of them at the time, and really she was just trying to play the reincarnation thing. And speaking of that, I wonder if we'll ever see like a Vudra world guide or a Kazmaran world guide where we'll see more about the Samsarans. As of right now, they're one of the core races of the Dragon Empires, which makes sense because those religious influences would exist in China, Japan, Mongolia. But it feels like the Samsaran belongs more strongly in India, and thus belongs more strongly in Vudra. Nevertheless, it's a whole lot of fun to introduce a race that reincarnates as a main theme into your campaigns, though every time she died, she was resurrected up until the very end, where we took away everybody's souls and made the last fight be a if you die for the game. And they went up against Cthulhu, and Cthulhu was able to bring the Arcanist down. But the fact that she was also role-playing a fallen god, another super fun experience for sure, meant that we got to play with a whole lot of things with how gods worked in Pathfinder. We ran through the ancient Osirian pantheon, because the ancient Osirians have a god named Nephthys, who I just kind of flavored back from Nethys. The story went that Nephthys worked with the demon lord Abraxas for more power in exchange, imprisoning all of the other ancient Osirian gods and elevating Nephthys through Abraxas's puppeteering to status as a core deity as Nethys. Over the course of that game, Sarah had to choose whether or not she wanted to side with Abraxas or side with the Osirian gods, who I made all Samsarans that had elevated themselves to godhood, because why not? I was the GM. Since she was playing Nethys, there was a lot of running around big fancy buildings in Sothis that are dedicated to the god, finding Nethys's body when Nethys was still a pharaoh, going inside his mind to find secrets to unlock a powerful spellbook. I could wax poetic on it forever, but suffice to say, whole lot of fun. Now, if you're playing a Samsaran wizard who was once a Samsaran druid might be a little closer to nature than the average wizard. A Samsaran summoner who was once a Samsaran barbarian might be a little quicker to anger, a little quicker to get up in the face of the things that the Eidolon is chewing into. I think I just found the recipe for a synthesis right there. The list goes on. In addition, since, you're gonna come back when you die, barring GM shenanigans or Pharasma shenanigans, which I guess really are the same thing most of the time, you probably don't have much of a fear of death because you're gonna just come right back. This is part of life's journey. You're just a cog in the wheel that turns. That said, in my opinion, a Samsaran makes a great candidate to become a member of the Green Faith. For more information about the Green Faith, you can follow this card right here. Failing that, Irori makes a good candidate for a stereotypical Samsaran god, because that's kind of Irori's shtick. The world will turn as it is, and you're just a part of it. Really, honestly, Samsarans could probably become Irori's favorite race, not unlike the elves for Calistria or the dwarves for Torog. Now, Samsaran adventurers or NPCs on the opposite side of this, who don't play stereotypes, and playing things that aren't stereotypes is often the most rewarding in my opinion, are probably very strongly aligned to one of the four corners of the alignment box. A Samsaran can live for 250 plus 6 percentage dice worth of years, meaning at max, if we go lore as written, a Samsaran will live for 850 years, meaning at max. The Samsaran can outlive elves and is the most long-lived race in the Inner Sea region in Galarion, probably in all of Paizo's multiverse, barring immortal shenanigans. A Samsaran comes of age at 60 years, but the trained category for a random Samsaran starting age, which classically includes things like magi, wizards, druids, can land anywhere from 68 to 108 years, which means before your Samsaran has stepped out into the world and begun his journey. A lot of your Samsaran's friends, especially if those friends were like Gripply or Orcs or any of the other short-lived races, might have died or even gone through a couple of generations. In this way, the Samsarans can share a lot of things in common with the Forlorn, a category of elves which differs from the stereotypical elf by upbringing rather than ethnicity. Elves that spend their whole life in the company of short-lived races will see things be born, live, and die while they're still basically children, and obviously that's going to have an effect on somebody's mind. Fun fact, the iconic rogue Mauriciel is a forlorn elf, but Samsarans definitely have that same thing subjected to them if they're living around other humanoids. This can break somebody's mind as easy as anything else, and thus it might push them to something like, say, lawful good or chaotic good, fighting for justice and freedom for the races that get a much shorter lifespan so they can enjoy more of it, or it could push them to to want to dominate their peers, lawful evil or chaotic evil, because they're going to live longer, they deserve it. The rest of you are just short-lived, unenlightened slaves. Anyway, what do you guys think about Samsarans? Have you ever used them? Have you ever played one? Are you guys still stoked for Pathfinder 1st Edition with all that Pathfinder 2nd Edition coming around? I'm honestly really excited for both. And if you'd like to follow our Pathfinder 2nd Edition coverage, you can follow this card right here. As always, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of the Forgotten Race Review, where we'll be talking about the Venara, drops next Monday.